Alright, good afternoon then folks. We have just entered US trade for the day on Tuesday the 21st of November. Now we've had a bit of a pullback against recent moves, which is, somewhat to be expected. Obviously, markets do not move in a straight line, and we are approaching the minutes from the Fed later on, so about 3.5 hours to go. So I'd have to imagine we get a relatively muted US session up until that, as we lie in wait for some potential further updates on how the Fed view monetary policy into next year. So European shares steady near 5.5 week high before Fed minutes. European shares are steady. US shares or US stock indexes are down a little bit in today's European session, and the handover from the Asian session earlier on. But really not a great deal to talk about. We got Nvidia ahead of Nvidia results a little bit later on, ahead of artificial intelligence chip leader Nvidia's quarterly report and the release of minutes from the Federal Reserve's recent meetings. Obviously Nvidia heavy influence in the Nasdaq, but you'd have to imagine that probably doesn't result in much ahead of the minutes tonight. So I wouldn't manage the minutes give you too much either, but ultimately you're a bit bereft of trade ideas in today's session so far. As you can see, we flick across US equity futures slightly negative, not by a massive amount, but they are negative. European equities, the majority of them are just chopping sideways. The FTSE down a little bit, up a little bit. We'll have a look at the chart in a minute. FTSE is making a bit of an attempt higher in recent trade, but Asia Pacific stocks mixed to negative, but ultimately there's not really a lot going on in the stock index world. Oil down slightly. Gold had a big spike higher, just kind of at the kind of pit trading hours open at 120, which was interesting. We'll have a quick look at that. Not really driven by too much other than the fact that yields are still slightly lower on the trading day today so far. But the US dollar continues its move to the downside, not by much aggressiveness. Kind of handover from Asia into Europe today. Just US dollar is likely to remain under pressure going forward unless the minutes change anything a little bit later on. Your Aussie and your Kiwi higher. Your Aussie hawkish minutes from the RBA overnight. Have to imagine that the Aussie stays somewhat supported in trading sessions to come. Canadian dollar, euro slightly lower, but ultimately not really doing too much either, to be perfectly honest. Canadian dollar, again, slightly lower, mixed to lower, but inflation in Canada slightly below consensus of 3.2, actual at 3.1, likely to put paid to any thoughts from the Bank of Canada to go and hike interest rates again. But again, it doesn't result in much movement. The Japanese yen was higher across the board earlier on. I'm just kind of waffling here at this point. There's not really a great deal going on in FX by any stretch of the imagination. Movement is coming in gold, and then a bit of downside in stocks. You can see the S&P, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, the Russell all taking a turn to the downside. The DAX, the Euro stocks hanging out at the highs. The FTSE is just all over the place in recent trade over the last 7 days. So I won't pay too much attention to that. You can see just if you blow the S&P chart up, it's just a natural reaction and it's just a pullback. I would be keeping an eye on this 45.20 level though. If we can get back into these highs, maybe 45.25. But if we can get back into those highs, it'd be interesting to see how the S&P would react in and around there. You do have a kind of inner trend line, a little short one in there. Whereas if you were to come back and you were to come and test this sort of a level here, I think that would be interesting for some fresh longs to get back to the top side. And is it the best trend line in the world? Absolutely not. Is it the best support level in the world? Absolutely not. But two of these things converging in the same place would make sense for maybe a little 0.5% risk or something like that, but we will keep an eye on that as and when it gets to it a little bit later on today. You can see gold though ripping. Gold is ripping in recent trade, not really driven by anything that I can see, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't really explain that move other than the fact that it is in an uptrend, higher lows and higher highs, and does continue its upward move higher. Same thing with silver. So precious metals enjoying themselves in recent trade. You can see obviously same thing with silver. They like yields being towards the lows. Yields are still lower on the trading day today, but a little bit of a pullback over the European session today, but again, not much to see there. They will be waiting for the Fed, or for the minutes from the Fed later on. Oil grinded lower in Asia, but it's just chopped sideways in Europe so far, so not really too much to see there. The US dollar continues its move to the downside, but dollar yen not done too much since 4 o'clock this morning, 3 o'clock this morning. Dollar index the same. You can see your Aussie, Kiwi, Euro, Sterling, dollar Swiss, dollar CAD, dollar yen. It's just doing nothing across FX. Pretty dire trading session today so far. You can see the inflation consensus 3.2, actual 3.1, so below consensus for the Bank of Canada. Housing markets though pretty in line with consensus. The actual monthly figure, month-over-month figure in line with consensus as well, so not too much to see there in terms of Canadian inflation either. We got some home sales figures at 3 o'clock, so 20 minutes. Do they shake up markets? Probably not. Have to wait and see for the minutes later on. Now, bets ramp up within markets. The Fed will look to cut interest rates, potentially even as close as March of 2024. Now, are they likely to suggest that? You'd have to imagine probably not. It probably wouldn't be a good idea to suggest they're going to cut interest rates at any point next year. They might be open to the fact, but they should probably stick to their guns that they're not going to cut interest rates next week. So yeah, I'm not so sure they give us the green light to continue these moves higher, but the markets seem to believe the Fed is done. I think if they do introduce the word rate cuts, markets will rally off the back of that, and if they push back on that, I don't think markets will care too much. I think the trends are pretty set at this point in time. I think the dollar bearish trend is well intact, and therefore do stocks pop higher. You have to imagine as long as the economy remains resilient, the stocks do continue to push higher. Albeit not in today's session, but that obviously cannot happen every session, but we will keep an eye on that as and when we get to it. But minutes later on, that's the thing to watch at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll break that down in tomorrow's videos, but do we get much movement till then? Hazard a guess, probably not. But if you're along some gold, you've done well today. If not, probably not doing or not having the best of trading days. But keep your money in your pocket. We can go again tomorrow.